Welcome to the Sad Crime Channel. Today, case from France. Jean-Claude Romand was born on February 11, 1954, as the son of Aimé and Anne-Marie. His father worked as a sawmill manager. He was the essence of masculinity in his son's opinion, which included emotional coldness. His mother, on the other hand, was a hypochondriac, constantly complaining about her health. She was regarded in the family as weak and frail, so everyone tried to tiptoe around her. The boy spent part of his childhood on a farm in Clairvaux-les-Lacs, a small French village located 127 kilometers northwest of Geneva. When he was still an elementary school student, he and his parents moved to Clairvaux, where Mr. and Mrs. Romand built a lavish house. The couple's friends, schoolmates, and teachers remembered Jean-Claude as a kind, quiet, and well-mannered young man. Romand Jr.'s development was mostly influenced by his father. Cold, distant, never showing emotion. Jean-Claude wanted to be like him because he quickly understood that this kind of behavior helps maintain emotional balance in the family. What one doesn't talk about can't hurt anyone, so it's best to remain silent. Or, alternatively, you can resort to lying. Not telling the truth particularly appealed to the young man. Through constant training, he gradually became more and more proficient in this area. Not informing his parents, especially his mother, about minor problems at school became his daily bread, and even a kind of act of mercy, for the ailing Anne-Marie seemed incapable of taking on any stress. Jean-Claude graduated from high school in 1971 and then enrolled in a course to prepare for the forestry school exams. However, he soon abandoned his studies and took a new direction. He decided to become a doctor. He did not feel a special calling, but concluded that the medical profession was more financially rewarding. His disgust at touching sick people was to be rewarded by a generous salary, high social standing, and the opportunity to live a life of luxury. As an added incentive, the young man's distant cousin Florence, for whom he had already had warm feelings for years, was also going to medical school. Jean-Claude and Florence got into medical school and soon formed an official relationship. Over time, however, Florence began to pull away from him. She realized that she did not truly love him and wanted to disentangle herself from the relationship somehow. Romand did not take this rejection well. He closed himself off and began to neglect his student duties. At the end of his second year, he failed several exams. He also failed to turn up for a revision exam, excusing himself with a sprained wrist. In an old habit, he did not admit to anyone that he had failed his education. Eventually, however, one of his further acquaintances realized that Romand's name was not on the list of those who had passed on to the next year. When he confronted him with this information, Jean-Claude declared that he was suffering from cancer. Faced with such a terrible truth, the suspicious colleague did not dare to ask any further questions. The university authorities allowed Jean-Claude to repeat the second year. The unlucky student was officially interested in doing so, and unofficially he started attending classes for the third year. He attended lectures, studied, took notes, and even took exams. All this to keep his family and friends in the false belief that he was easily following the career path he had set out earlier. As hard as it is to believe, this state of affairs continued for 11 years. Florence also came back to him immediately upon hearing about his cancer diagnosis. When Florence became a master of pharmacy and took a part-time job in a pharmacy, Jean-Claude officially asked her to marry him. The couple married, and soon their 2 children were born, daughter Caroline and son Antoine. The fact of having a family did not affect his truthfulness. He first lied to his wife that he had obtained a medical degree, and then that he had obtained a position as a research assistant at INSERM, Institut National de la Santé et de la Recherche Médicale, a French state research institute. His appetite grew with every bite. At one point he announced to family and friends that he had been employed by the World Health Organization as a member of a research team tasked with developing formulations for new drugs. Every morning he would go to the office in Geneva, from which he would return late in the evening. From time to time he would take a business trip to some European country, from which he would bring back small souvenirs. All this was, of course, a lie. Jean-Claude was indeed going to World Health Organization headquarters, but not because he worked there. He would enter the public ground floor of the building, from where he would take leaflets, brochures, pens, and stationery, which he would later use as props in his personal show. He withdrew money from a local ATM and sent emails using a guest computer. Later, he visited the office building less frequently and instead went to cafes and restaurants and visited friends. Sometimes he rented a room in a hotel, from which he would later call his wife and children. The fake doctor never took up normal paying work. In the beginning, he lived on the money obtained from the sale of the bachelor's flat he had received from his parents for the duration of his studies. He also had access to their bank accounts, but these funds soon became insufficient. So Jean-Claude came up with a better idea. He convinced everyone he could that, thanks to his connections, he had the opportunity to set up high-interest bank deposits in Switzerland. Tempted by the vision of a large income, people entrusted their entire life savings to him, never to get them back again later. Florence did not even suspect anything. Her husband spent years convincing her that he was settling his taxes in Geneva, where he did his work. The fake doctor's scam, although perfectly prepared, did not, however, proceed completely smoothly. In 1988, his father-in-law demanded the withdrawal of funds from the deposit. Jean-Claude continued to deceive the old man for some time until he died in mysterious circumstances. One day, while the two men were alone in the house of Florence's parents, the owner of the house fell down the stairs in such an unfortunate manner that he died before an ambulance arrived on the scene. After her husband's death, Florence's mother sold the large house and gave her son-in-law the staggering sum of 1.3 million francs to invest at a profit. Jean-Claude used some of these funds to improve his own property status and purchased a sizable estate near Ferney. It was there that the fake doctor met Corinne Ourten, a newly divorced woman with 2 children. After several meetings, he declared his love for her. The mistress, although she did not take her partner very seriously, decided to entrust him with a larger sum of money so that he would place it in a Swiss deposit. After a while, however, she began to have doubts. She had not written down any agreement with Romand on the basis of which she could demand anything from him. When she started demanding the cash back, Jean-Claude broke off all contact. He was already in considerable financial trouble at the time. The 1.3 million francs he had received from his mother-in-law had gone in a flash. Corinne's money was, of course, gone too. In addition, he began to be approached by other acquaintances concerned about the lack of expected returns on the invested funds. The cold-blooded con man was losing control of the situation, which was taking its toll on his psyche. Jean-Claude was desperately trying to find a way out of the situation. He contemplated, although it is not clear if he was serious, killing himself. One evening, he called his mistress while drunk, babbling that he had just taken a large amount of medication and would probably die soon. He forbade her to call an ambulance by threatening to administer a lethal injection to himself if she hung up. The situation eventually calmed down, not for long, however. At the beginning of January 1993, Romand bought a pistol, a silencer, a packet of cartridges, and a packet of highly sedating drugs. He then went to a petrol station where he purchased 2 petrol canisters. Equipped like this, he returned home. On the evening of the 9th of January 1993, he had a long conversation with Florence about her mother's mental state. After this, as he later testified to police officers, he lost consciousness. He woke up in the middle of the night holding a bloody dough roller in his hand. Next to him on the bed lay his wife with her head shattered. As if nothing had happened, he slept the rest of the night next to Florence's body. In the morning, he covered her body with a quilt and prepared breakfast for the children. He watched a cartoon with them on TV for a while. Later, he told his daughter to go back to bed. When the child lay down under the duvet, he put a pillow to her head and shot. He did the same to his son. He then wrapped the murder weapon in newspaper, got into his car, and drove to his parents' house. He first murdered his father by shooting him twice in the back. Later, he lured his mother into the living room, whom he shot twice in the breast. He remembered that her denture fell out of his mother's mouth, which he carefully put in place. Finally, he killed the family dog, which, terrified by the bang of the gunshots, ran from corner to corner without understanding what was happening. He covered the bodies with a blanket. He then called Corinne and arranged a fancy dinner with her. The woman was pleased and even excited. When Jean-Claude turned up outside her house in the evening, she got into the car without any problems. The couple, however, did not make it to the restaurant. Instead, they circled in the middle of nowhere, as the driver said he was lost. Eventually, he stopped the car, got out, and went to the boot. When he returned, he told his lover that he had a surprise gift for her. He asked her to close her eyes and go outside. When she did, he sprayed her in the face with pepper spray and then tasered her. The terrified Corinne fought fiercely for her life. She begged for mercy for the sake of her children. Her strategy proved effective, and soon the attacker let go. When they both returned to the car, he began to convince Urtine that she had attacked him and that he was merely defending himself. He argued that he was irritable due to a recurrence of his cancer. Shocked, she did not argue and wanted to go home as soon as possible. That same evening, Jean-Claude tried 9 more times to speak to his lover on the phone. Their last exchange went calmly. Jean-Claude promised to go to psychotherapy and give her the money. But as soon as he hung up the phone, he decided to kill himself. He poured petrol over the bodies of Florence and the children who were still in the house. He started a fire and then barricaded himself in his own bedroom. It was 4 a.m. From the window, he could see a waste truck passing by. Witnesses immediately alerted the fire brigade. Romand was successfully rescued. He was burned and had to be put into a coma, but he lived. In the course of the investigation, it came to light that his wife and children had died before the fire had even consumed their home. The fact of Aimé and Anne-Marie's murder also soon came to light. At first, the police suspected that the whole family had been involved in criminal activities and had been killed by mafia. However, the revenge hypothesis quickly collapsed when the investigators' attention shifted to Jean-Claude himself. One phone call to the WHO dispelled the myth of Dr. Romand, a scientist working on new drugs. Not only was there no such person on the staff list, nor was he on the list of doctors authorized to practice in France. The fraudster was immediately arrested. At first, he pleaded not guilty. He claimed that on the fateful 9th of January, he saw strange men breaking into his house. He categorically denied hurting his parents. He tried to make up another story on the spot. Finally, after 7 hours of interrogation, he capitulated. He confessed the whole truth calmly and without much emotion. He stated that he was very relieved to finally be himself. Prior to his trial, Jean-Claude Romand underwent a psychiatric evaluation. He was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. He constantly craved to be the center of attention and did not seem to understand what a terrible act he had committed. The doctors did not recommend that he undergo psychotherapy, as, in their opinion, it would have been ineffective. On the 2nd of July, 1996, the defendant was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of applying for parole after 2015. At his final hearing, he read a handwritten letter in which he apologized to his wife, children, and parents for the harm he had caused them. He also expressed the hope that Florence's spirit would forgive him and show him the path to a further, better life. He was released in 2018 at the age of 65. He has taken up residence at the Benedictine Monastery in Font-Gombeau. And that's the end for today. Thank you for listening until the end. Until next time, goodbye and stay safe.